Hey. Okay, Rebecca, it's your time to shine.
Thanks so much, Zoe. Hey, good evening, everybody. And I really wanted to welcome you to our pre-event for the ALPS conference, which will be taking place on Friday this week, Friday, October 27th to Sunday, October 29th. So really wanted to welcome you and thank you for making time to join us today. This is the first time that we're doing a pre-event. And so we would welcome all of your feedback about how we can make this even better going forward. We plan to have a lot more of these similar type of events during the year. So welcome your feedback and really thank you for being here with us this evening. I wanted to start with just a little bit of information about the conference. So as I mentioned, it's from the 27th to the 29th, and it will take place in Geneva at the Bâtiment des Forces Motrices. We're going to have 16 speakers, including Rick Dublin, who is a PhD and the founder of MAPS. And as you all probably know, MAPS is really the most renowned psychedelic association in the world, based in the US.
Oh, Rebecca, you muted.
Rebecca, go back.
Yeah, we also have a section with research posters, and the most important thing is that we will have lots of time to create professional connections. So it really is, I would really very strongly encourage you to join us for the conference at the end of the week. Now let's get into our pre-event. What are we going to be doing at this pre-event? So at this pre-event, we have a number of members of the ALPS Foundation that are going to be speaking to you tonight, answering a few questions that come from the Instagram and a few questions that you've been asking. So we have Federico, who's our president, Abigail, Morten, and of course myself, and Zoe, who manages our social media. And so I'm gonna pass over, this is just a few words about our participants. Federico, who's our president, and a PhD candidate in psychology at the University of Lausanne. We also have Abigail, who's also a PhD candidate in medical neuroscience at the University of Freiburg in Switzerland. And we have Morten, who's also a PhD candidate in medical neuroscience at the University of Freiburg in Switzerland as well. Here is just basically a short note about the amazing work that they were doing in the space of psychology and, of course, working also in psychedelics. So I'm going to pass the baton on to Zoe, who's going to take us through the rest of the program. But one thing I must add, as I said, your personal questions, student questions, and Instagram questions are what we will address during this session. So passing it over to you, Zoe. Thank you so much, everybody.
Hi, everyone. We are really happy to see you here. Actually, it's our first event, and it's great. It's happening. It's such a cool opportunity for all the public just to openly ask any question you want to our psychedelic researchers. What an opportunity, huh? So we have a bunch of questions we received from via social media, etc. They are different. Some of them are personal questions, some of them are related research from students, and some of them are quite just fun. You can also ask your questions here in a meeting chat, and I'll read them also. That's actually the purpose why we are here, right? And so I think we'll start a little bit from personal questions, right? Just to introduce you guys a little bit more, Morten, Federica, Abigail. So could you just briefly, we have a quite short meeting today, like let's say 40 minutes, right? More or less. We are not limited, but let's aim for 40 minutes. So could you briefly introduce your study, because it's very specific topic, right? Psychedelic science. So just a few words about your work, about your PhD. Let's start from Federica. Could you just a few words?
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Yeah, it's the first time we use this format, and I'm really looking forward to see how cool it can be. And yeah, so my specific question in my study, because I'm also doing a PhD, revolves around some understanding of the mystical experience. So basically, you know, when you take psychedelics, sometime even quite often people can really relate these states, these mystical experience states. And these are experiences that are very profound for people, that are really important for them, that really creates a moment in time, and they can see it as a before and after moment, like for their life. And yes, basically my curiosity would be to see how can this happen, because these kind of experiences, like of oceanness, of feeling being one with the universe, or that everything is connected, or great moments of awe and you know, like wonder for whatever is happening. So these kind of feelings one could have already normally, but basically they can be yeah, they can be created by psychedelics intake. And I wonder basically, what is that's happening in the brain and in the mind that really can lead to this? Because there has to be some mechanism, some psychological mechanism as well. So my focus of research is to understand basically from yeah, from the cognitive science processes, how can this happen? Yes.
Great. Morten, will you share your study? What it's about?
I definitely will. However, I think it's Abigail's place first because my study is basically an extension of what
Okay,
she has been already working on for the last couple of years. So, Abigail, would you like to start?
please.
Sure. Yeah. Me and Morten work in the same lab, so that makes this kind of easy to have some overlap. So I study the effects of LSD on neuroplasticity in healthy humans, which means that we give people LSD and then we measure their brain activity up to a week later to try and find evidence of neuroplasticity. And I think I was drawn to this topic because neuroplasticity has been touted as this partial explanation for why psychedelics are therapeutic, but there's just not that much strong evidence for it in humans. And so I just wanted to see if I could find some. I also study adverse effects and a bunch of other little things in this space that I won't get into, but at the conference, I'm talking about adverse effects, like all the negative things that can happen to people as well after a psychedelic experience. In our lab, we like to study the good and the bad. So that's pretty cool. And maybe I'll just take up that last question because I had to smile when I saw it. You know, what challenges have you faced working on your PhD? The whole thing is a challenge because your job is to bite off a little more than you can chew every day and hope you learn something. So it's hard to say, but I would say sitting with people on LSD has been a challenge in a very good way. And statistics, those two.
Yeah, I feel your point. Statistics. Yeah, Morten?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, Abigail. Very well put. Yeah, Abigail already touched up on basically the big picture stuff we're working on is neuroplasticity in healthy adults. With a little addition, I'm working in elderly because the older you get, the less plastic your brain becomes. And there's also some aspects of neuropathology where neuroplasticity plays a role, all of which being somewhat tangentially with aging. Sorry, my screen is doing weird stuff. I'll turn it off. Yeah, so that is going to be my main focus. How I got to that point basically was through more applied psychedelics slash neuroscience. Basically, what I was working on before was using microdose of truffles, like the psychedelic truffles, and combining that with something that guides the rewiring of the brain. In our case, that was called something like neurofeedback, where you basically can train your brain and act on specific parameters. Yeah, but during that whole project, I realized, which also brings me to answer of the challenges, that there's so much we think we already know. Like when the space talks about stuff like, for example, neuroplasticity, there's always already this preformed narrative that plasticity and psychedelics is like this, it's like that, it affects these regions. And then when you actually start looking into it, you realize, oh, wow, there's very little we actually know. And there's so many open questions that still needs to be answered. And yeah, I'm glad that I went down this path of learning the hard way that, hey, what we try to do might be a bit too far ahead than actually what the data already suggests. And now I have the opportunity to generate that data that may or may not be used in the future to actually turn this into something that we can use in application. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Guys, like, everyone is asking basically, is it true that you are putting the people in this MRI thing, under psychedelics and then scan the brain and, like, is it, everyone is asking, like, is it really legal in Switzerland? I received so much questions about this. So it's legal here, right? Just to...
in a study, yeah. It's not legal to put people in an MRI on LSD if it's not a study, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's quite a lot of psychedelic research in Switzerland, and we don't do MRI in our lab. We do EEG, so the electrodes on people's heads, and then TMS, where we put a magnet on people's heads and then stimulate their brain.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's part of it.
It's amazing.
And just to, as a reminder for everyone, you can add your questions in this meeting chat box. So if you have the questions while we are talking, please go. Caroline is asking, as far as I know, it's also legal in therapeutical settings in Switzerland. Is it true?
Yes, it's true. Yeah, you can basically have legal access to psychedelic therapy in Switzerland through the Federal Office of Public Health. It's an access you get for every given person for a given problem that is treatment resistant. Mm-hmm. So you have to prove that you already had other therapies, both psychotherapies and pharmacotherapies with antidepressants and the like that didn't work. Mm-hmm. And then basically, if you fit in the criteria, and you also have to be a Swiss citizen or a Swiss resident anyway. And if you fit in this criteria, basically you can ask to do a psychedelic therapy, whether in a private practice or in a clinic or even in a hospital. Like in Geneva hospital, we actually provide that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And by the way, how long does it take to get an approval for someone who has, for instance, treatment-resistant depression, to get an approval for this therapy?
It depends. You have to go through some steps of evaluation. You have to meet different professionals to check somatic stuff, psychological aspects, but it's still Switzerland, so it doesn't take 6 months.
Okay. And the question, also like continuing the personal questions topic. Just curious, what inspired you to choose this specific topic, like psychedelics, and what did your parents say? What did your friends say? Like, okay, that's not a very usual topic to choose, to pick. What was the reaction of society?
So for me, like I very vividly remember a talk I had with my mother about this. We were talking about it was around New Year's Eve and Christmas. I don't know why I remember that, but yeah, I was telling her about some of the stuff that we had planned, and she's like, "Oh no, LSD, isn't that the thing where you once you do it, you always get hooked and you always have these flashbacks and you do crazy shit?" And it took me a total of 15 minutes. It was a monologue, basically, like citing several studies, telling her about my own. At that point, I was still a student and I was working on a PhD proposal, going through the whole rationale of my topic, and immediately she changed her mind. Like that. Then a couple of months later, my dad, similar story. the moment I told him that I'm going to work on something with neuroplasticity in elderly, he was like, "Oh wow, yeah, no, I need that. I don't want to get dementia." It's like, nah, not that easy, but yeah, sure. So surprisingly, there's a lot of acceptance around the topic, and especially since I'm not just a guy who did acid on a festival once, but actually am actively working on this. It's quite easy to convince my peers that, trust me, this is real science, and I know somewhat what I'm doing. So it gives it a bit of credibility to actually do this professionally. Yeah, but it was quite funny sometimes, and it still is. Yeah.
Okay. Hey guys, anything to add, Federico, Abigail, or we have a question here also in the chat? Okay. I'll read it. Guys, I see your questions about organization also. I think we'll postpone it to the end, and now we're just talking about psychedelics and then all the organizational things. You said that you are working with TMS, and I was wondering if you have some more detail about the projects that you are working on, and if there's the possibility to do a master's practical projects in your lab or something similar.
We do have internships, usually not master's theses for people who are not studying in Freiburg, although occasionally there have been exceptions to that rule. But we definitely do internships. Send us an email.
I'll just put my email in the chat, and then you can just contact me and Abigail. I'll put her in the CC. Yeah, just send us an email, and we will send you some more information.
Great. See, guys, it's already like such a beautiful webinar, huh? Okay, and so slowly but surely we are moving to students' questions. That's could you please share your thoughts? What are the hottest trends in psychedelic research right now? What is like the most popular or the most whatever? What do you think?
Metacognition, of course. No, this
I was
is
also going to say probably what I'm studying, but I don't really know. I've never had much of a head for trends. I keep hearing a lot about VR, and I don't know why. Maybe that. I don't know.
I'd say that that's still quite early. I mean, I've been to a conference. Some of you probably have been as well in October, which was the Insight, and there were very few talks actually going on about VR. I just heard it a lot from during the network events that people are talking about it and considering it. But I don't know. I believe it when I see it. But what I definitely saw was that there's a bit of a paradigm shift when it comes to actually Abigail Field, which is neuroplasticity research. So there's been some new findings, especially when it comes to those receptors in your brain that are more or less responsible for neuroplastic changes. So they're called TRKB receptors. I don't know where the abbreviation actually stands for, to be honest.
Track B is how you say it.
Track B, and what does it stand for?
Tyrosine receptor kinase, I think.
There you go. Yeah, and like this is one paper found that actually psychedelics help or keep this receptor open so that it's more receptive for action. So there's a more direct link between psychedelics and neuroplasticity. However, this is only found in mice and in cell cultures. So whether this translates to humans, still to be seen. But it's the first piece of I want to call it evidence that drives a bit more of this neuroplasticity narrative, and it's very important because there's not much that had been out there for a while. So sounds probably very specific, very niche, but for me this was huge.
Okay.
Maybe an idea maybe on general trends. Of course, there are all the disorders, all the problematics in mental health that have to be tackled. So you have depression, PTSD, addiction, anxiety, but then you also have different ways of treating people. So you could have couple therapy with psychedelics, group therapy settings, and then you have yeah, maybe what else? There's also something that has to be really checked is like cost efficacy of these treatments. And yeah,
What about
maybe
you know, like something like connection between psychedelics and spiritual things, or like is it like also some yeah, some mystical experiences and all the things? Is it like popular to study nowadays, or is it even possible to study?
You know, my impression is that I mean, that's been a trend since the beginning, right? The original Johns Hopkins psilocybin studies were about mystical experiences. And my feeling is that now people are kind of questioning that framework a little bit, actually, especially in Switzerland. You know, most people in studies, most patients even, don't have the classic mystical experience. And they still see positive effects on well-being, or they still get better from their depression. So it's clearly not the be-all end-all of the psychedelic experience. I think people are kind of, maybe one trend that I see happening now is that we're kind of coming down from the hype a little bit, not into a crash, but more into a more realistic, nuanced view of psychedelics. And part of that is kind of questioning this whole mystical experience framework, perhaps.
Okay, thank you. And talking about just substances, in your opinion, what substance is kind of easier or cheaper even to study? Like, is it LSD or psilocybin or MDMA, or like for master thesis, for instance, or PhD or any study?
Those are all equally difficult,
Okay.
I would say.
I wouldn't say what substance is the easiest to study. What dose, I think, is more of a correct question. So as someone who comes from the Netherlands doing a project on microdosing, I can tell you that the main reason why we did microdosing was because of feasibility. Like, because when you study microdose, you don't need all this complex infrastructure and training as you would in high dose. Like, you don't need a therapist who sits with a person, or like a trained trip sitter. You don't need to keep them there for a extended amount of time. You can basically, especially in the Netherlands where getting truffles is legal, you can basically tell the people, hey, order your stuff online, take it in the morning, and 2 hours later you come into the lab and we do our scan and we do our training. And that's what we did, basically. That's the only way our study worked out to begin with, because of this higher feasibility with the microdose. So that is something you can definitely look into. Other than that, I totally agree with Abigail and Federico. Like, there's not really anything that is easier or harder. LSD takes longer, and does it make it easier or harder? I don't think
maybe
so.
it's easier to do it on healthy subjects than people with mental health issues. So whenever you do maybe an experiment, it's easier to go for that. But in any case, like, to really do research with the actual administration of these substances is a real thing. Like, you can, it's feasible, be motivated, and you can make it. But it's it's a real thing.
What about if we are not talking about the classical psychedelics, but let's say something like 2CB? Is it more difficult to study 2CB than LSD because it's like less studied? Or
most certainly, and that would have to do with just where you get it. I mean, in Switzerland, we have places that manufacture LSD, psilocybin, and MDMA for research, and there are now 2CB studies in Basel, but one of the biggest hurdles is finding some 2CB that is conforming to standards for clinical trials.
Legal.
So some lab
2CB.
has to make it, and they're going to charge a lot of money, and you have to find them.
Okay. It's very important to know. Thank you. Interesting.
However, I mean, there are some studies on DMT going on, especially in London, as far as I know. But also in Basel, right? There are also DMT studies, and I think in terms of easier for the people involved, I think you could actually say DMT is easier in the sense of that it usually wears off fairly quickly. So within 5 to 10 minutes, people are back to normal, depending on the way it is administered, of course. Like if they have a continuous IV, then this will last as long as the IV is on, basically. But because DMT usually is more of it's a very intense journey the participants will undergo, but it's happening more internally rather than externally. So there it is more important to be basically giving structure before and after, because during the trip itself, people will be more looking inwards. Still, I'm not comfortable saying that this is easier in the sense it's you can do more people in a day. But it's not necessarily easier. It's different. It's a different kind of trip sitting you have to do there. But nonetheless, you better be aware that this is, as Abigail said, probably more than you bargained for in the beginning. But still, you learn while you do it. So the trip sitting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So finishing the topic with the students' questions. Maybe any advice for students picking a research topic in psychedelic field?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it's like now. When I was trying to find a research topic in this field, just based on that experience, I would say don't be too picky, and focus on methodology more so, well, at least as much as topic. Because if you want to study psychedelics as a scientist, it's not enough to just be interested in psychedelics. You also have to really be interested in science. And even if you can't get into psychedelics right away, if you get to know the methodologies and statistics and the scientific way of thinking, you can apply that to anything.
How it was for me in the beginning, I always wanted to do something with psychedelics, but in Groningen, where I was stationed at that time, there was very little going on. So therefore, I just decided, all right, like what kind of method would probably be important for what I want to study, and especially when we look at neuroplasticity, functional connectivity, something like that seems to be very promising, and an easy way to do that. One way to look at that is through EEG, which is like one of these neuroimaging methods. So therefore, I focused on a project that uses advanced EEG processing methods, and gaining skill in this specific method really helped me to get into something that basically does that, but also with psychedelics. So I think this is even more so important than actually having worked with these substances, because there's there are only so many labs in the world that actually offer this. So it's not expected of you that you already have experience in this field. It does help, but it's not expected. There are also some summer schools, by the way, which you can go to. Then you can put it on your CV. In the Netherlands, you can look out for that. I don't know how it is here, but probably ALPS will also do something like that in the future at one point. So that usually helps you to get a first foot into the door, kind of. Yeah, but that's something for another time, I think.
I would say, if I may add something, that basically the field is really, really young. So this is a very good point when someone has to start some stuff in science, because it means there are a lot of things that have to be studied yet. And since psychedelics, they touch upon so many things and so many human core functioning, you can really study them from different perspectives. I mean, we are speaking about the biology and the science here, like the hard science, but you can really do also philosophy with them, anthropology. You can study ethics, you can study regulation, so policy making. And the other thing I would like to say is that to do really this as your job, you need to be really motivated. So because there are a lot of people starting PhDs and they don't end them, because like 1/3 of the people, because it's difficult. It's a lot of work. It's sometimes tedious work. So this means that you could really try to feel what interests you the most. So really try to feel the intrinsic motivation on your curiosity. What is that tastes for you the better in this field? And then you just follow your taste, your pleasure in discovering something, learning about something. And it's very, very open. So really like, I think this was my way.
Okay, thank you. So if you guys, participants, have any questions related to study, to the student's life, master thesis, PhD, please be welcome to ask. And now we're going to Instagram questions. The questions we got from Instagram. It's always, I think, the most interesting part. Okay, first question. I didn't change anything, so it was written like this. Could ALPS create a guideline for an independent work, like an audio guide, for instance? So if you want to discover it without any psychedelic-assisted therapy, I mean, without the therapist.
I'm not sure I understood.
I think it's kind of maybe harm reduction guides or something like this.
Or do they mean that basically you do a audio guide instead of a trip sitter?
Actually, it was my question also, but I just copy pasted, you know. So
no.
Maybe it's a meditation track to use for integration work, for example. I don't know. But yeah, this question raises a lot of questions. It's
Do we plan in our future to create any education or like harm reduction handbooks or something like this, like maps too, or?
You know, I think there's already a lot of great harm reduction resources out there for people. I think we can just link to those maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Okay. So the next question is, what is the legal framework for using magic mushrooms for curing anxiety in Switzerland?
Yeah, so as we said, basically you can apply to get a psychedelic assisted therapy, showing that you have a treatment resistant problem, meaning you tried already different kind of therapies that didn't work. And then basically you have the possibility to do that because basically it's an exceptional medical use of a substance that is still an illegal substance, that is still considered a drug. And so to use magic mushrooms, so we are speaking here basically of psilocybin, which is the active compound in the magic mushrooms. You would have to, for anxiety, you would have to go through this procedure in a clinic or in a private practice or in an hospital with somebody that is allowed to do that and trained to do that.
Mm-hmm. But does it even work with anxiety? Because I thought it's just like PTSD or dependence or depression, but anxiety.
Yeah, there's some pretty good data on that with especially with LSD actually, but also psilocybin. Some of the work has been with people who have anxiety because they have a life-threatening illness, in which case you might say, well, they don't have anxiety, they have a life-threatening illness. But you know, anxiety related to that. But there was a recent study of LSD for all types of anxiety that had positive results that just came out this year, I think. So there's really some potential there as well.
Okay. And we have actually a link in our chat box, which calls Legal Framework for the Use of Psychedelics in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I read that article. It's well done.
Okay, so we have a link now here. And we are going to the last questions. And the last questions from Instagram. We're actually very good in timing, guys. It's 35 minutes. So like, So both of those questions related to somehow recreational use, So I mean, using psychedelics without like just without the therapy itself. So the first question is, what is the difference between doing it, meaning taking substance, with a sitter and doing it on your own? If, as far as I know, the sitter doesn't provide any therapy and doesn't intervene in the process.
Well, I think the idea of a sitter is that they would sometimes intervene in the process if necessary, even if it's something like allaying confusion. Like, for example, if someone is at home and they're on LSD and the doorbell rings and they're by themselves, they might not really know what to do. So the sitter is the one who responds to that situation. Or if there's confusion about something that starts to get a little unpleasant for the person who's tripping because they're not sure what's going on, whatever it is, the sitter is the one who can provide reassurance and an anchor to reality. And then the idea is also that if the person who was tripping started to get anxious or deal with some really difficult things, that the sitter would at least offer some support and intervene in the process in some sense. So particularly for first timers, that difference can be a lot because it can be hard to imagine just how confused and lost somebody could get if they took a large dose of psychedelics by themselves for the first time.
Yeah.
Plus, if I may add to that, another aspect that plays a huge role is simply knowing that in case something happens, in case I would need some assistance, I know there's someone I can count on, and just having this fallback already puts your mind at such a level of ease that you wouldn't usually have when you're just on your own. So therefore, for those who consider using these substances recreationally, for the first couple of times, definitely have someone around who takes care of you, who basically is your fallback net, just in case something happens, and also just for your own peace of mind, basically.
Zoe, I'd also like to intervene in this very briefly because I'm actually training to become a sitter for psychedelic trips. And I think the importance about set and set-in is really crucial. And I think that the sitter can actually create a safe environment. So it really is, especially if people start dissociating and stuff like that, just by a simple touch, the sitter can bring them back into their body. So just saying, I think and just basically building on what Morten said, I think the sitter is really important, especially for those first times, so people just don't go into complete psychosis or panic, when they are on these trips. Just wanted to add that, just coming from, my experience of this.
Yeah, and maybe a difference between a sitter or doing it with a sitter in the context of a therapy is the therapy. So basically, if you do a proper psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, you're supposed to prepare the session with a therapist that is a psychotherapist, like his job is to do the therapy. And by preparing it, you really change the way it goes. And then the therapist is there, and the therapist is there also for after the moment. So to have other sessions, like other meetings, where you do the integration part, which is like, okay, how can I use this experience to basically ease my pain, improve my life? And that's a very specific goal that it's not always present, or maybe even not at all in recreational use. So there's the difference, really, the therapy you put around it. And it's super cool. I mean, it works. It's a tool. It's a very powerful tool.
Yeah, I think the second question is more or less about the same. It's about the many people they have found that responsible use of psychedelics without psychedelic assisted therapy can profoundly transform their lives. So what are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are they're probably right.
But of course, these are very, very intense experiences. So they can profoundly transform your life. Point is, how? And did you expect that? And in a good way or in a bad way? And yeah, that's that's open to analysis and to the responsibility of any given human that at some point decide to do that.
I have some thoughts on this because I feel like this question wants to hear something about the comment of, so basically, do we need a therapeutic framework at all if some people already have these experiences without? And so I want to frame this a little bit more under the umbrella of well, from a biological perspective, neuroplasticity, from a psychological perspective, psychological flexibility and cognitive flexibility. So the thing is that psychedelics do seem to open up your whole self to going a new path, basically erasing behaviors that you're kind of stuck on. So you're getting out of the loop, or you at least have the opportunity to break out of this loop that has had you trapped. And when you are basically when you're not depressed, when you just have a depressive episode, that's a difference. Like you can have a depressive episode, however, you might not be depressed. When you're depressed, this is a chronic thing over several months, years, whatever. The surrounding system in which you are currently operating in, the way you created the system probably keeps you in that same maladaptive track. And therefore, even though your brain potentially has the opportunity to adapt to changes and to changing, to you changing stuff, the environment in which you are in does not really foster that. So therefore, the environment, the system in which you're operating just puts you back on the same track, even though there was this window of opportunity in which you could have changed stuff. And that's why it's so important to have a therapist on your side, because with a therapist, you can actually work on these systems, on these things that put you back on a bad track. And I think that's also what the data has been showing. And more and more, there seems to be a consensus that without proper, psychotherapeutic guidance, these tools are not coming to their full potential. And I completely agree with that.
Okay, that's a great answer. Thank you. Yeah, it was actually our the last question. And now it's time for any questions from the participants, and I'll read a few of them regarding the organization of our conference. So, is there any chance to volunteer at the conference? I think we already fully booked by volunteers. The only one thing is we still maybe we'll need one more videographer or light technician. This is possible. Chances are. I'm planning. Hi everyone. I'm planning to join for the conference. Woohoo. Anyone from Geneva who could recommend a good, not too expensive hotel close to the conference?
I think we put some options in the website.
Yeah, I think so also.
Yes.
Yeah, you can check there. If no other questions, then we are saying thank you, Abigail, Federica, Morten, and we are going to your part. Rebecca, to the last part. Or we forgot some questions.
I think there's one question that says, you said that you're working with TMS, and I was wondering if you have some more detail about the projects that you're working on, and if there's a possibility to do a master's practical project.
No, we already talked about it. I sent my email address so they can contact
directly. That was it. Okay, great.
Cool. So
okay.
It was very interesting, honestly, even for me, I enjoyed a lot.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Zoe, for that excellent moderation and questions. That was really great. And thanks to our speakers, Federico, Morten, and Abigail. That was a really exciting discussion. I mean, I work with you, but I learned so much just from having this discussion. So thanks a lot. And most importantly, really want to thank our audience for being with us today. You know, really thank you. I think I just wanted to remind you, and I'm sure you have the dates in your mind, about the conference, which will start on Friday and go into Sunday this week. So the 27th to the 29th of October in Geneva at the Bâtiment des Forces Motrices. Absolutely gorgeous location. Of course, our 16 speakers, including Rick Dublin, the founder of MAPS, the movie night, the networking, research posters, and psychedelics art display, which you cannot miss this conference. And there will be lots of time to create professional connections. And as Federico was saying, this is a small world, and we are building something big. So it's great to have these connections now and be part of building psychedelics and be part of helping them fulfill their potential in the world. So we really very much look forward to welcoming you to the conference in a few days from today. Thank you so much for your time, and I really wanted to wish you a really beautiful evening.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for this sweet, cute comments you're making. And we have a nice surprise for you, for those who still thinking about buying the ticket. We have a 10% discount code. It's ALPS 10 here. You can use it for 10% discount. So see you all on Friday, right? Right.
Yay!
Yes.
Thank you so much, guys. That was amazing.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Thank you so much.